trying to get back to the basics of great products.
Power comes from sharing information.
I try to convince people to slow down.
Open.
This is the Soaked by Slush podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Soaked by Slush podcast. My name is William von der Palen and over in Copenhagen, Isak Rautio. Hi Isak.
Hi William, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. And today we have a interesting guest and a very interesting topic. So welcome aboard, Avi Meir.
Thank you.
Would you like to start off by just briefly introducing yourself and TravelPerk as well?
Yeah, sure. So quick personal background. I'm originally from Israel, although I've been living in Europe for the past 15 years. Background in technology. So I've been writing code since I was very young. And moved to the business travel or travel in general, travel industry in 2005. So it's been a while. Gives away my age a bit. I'm 38, but basically my entire career has been in travel. And most recently, as a co-founder and CEO of TravelPerk, which is the fastest and largest, fastest growing and largest business travel platform for SMBs, for small and medium-sized companies globally. We started with our focus in Europe, and now we are actually expanding and doubling down in the US, which is our largest market after acquisition of a competitor, which I'm sure we'll get to talk about today. But yeah, been doing this journey for the past 6 years. The company is 450 people all across the world, and we so far raised almost $150 million. From various funds, including DST, Chinovik, Target Global, and others.
Yeah, so as you hinted, and the sharpest listeners will already have connected the dots, the last year has been tough. And I think this is something that we're going to talk about. There's this one article that we need to cite before we start talking about this. Ben Horowitz wrote this thing called the Peacetime, Wartime CEO article, which is basically splits the different sort of archetypal roles for CEOs in different scenarios. Would you like to open what that means for you? How do you interpret those two ideas, and how has it affected your work in the recent year?
Yeah. I'm not sure I fully buy into this kind of divide where you have a clear line where you have war and peace. Mainly because fast growing startups, we were getting into 2020. We're growing. We never had a quarter where we didn't grow 3x in revenue year on year. And this kind of growth, this kind of rapid change of everything from your team to product to markets in which you operate, sometimes feel like war, right? You're just fighting a different type of war. So I'm not sure I buy into, everything is peaceful and then everything goes into war, unless we're talking about maybe big, stable public companies where, they got into this wartime from a relative stagnation, right? But that wasn't the case for us at TravelPerk. So, of course, I know his theory. I'm not sure I buy into it 100%. Having said that,
no, go ahead.
Having said that, of course, we had to go through a different, going from this growth moment to COVID time and 2020 and what we needed to do during the year. Of course, it was a different. We had to take different decisions, and we had to operate in different time horizons and with different goals in mind. So in this sense, maybe I'm being a bit too contrarian. So I agree there was a different operating mode. My point is only that it's a kind of a continuum rather than a distinct kind of binary war or peace, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I think it's purposefully also written in a quite black and white manner to emphasize the point. But obviously, not everything is that clear, especially in a company like yours with rapid growth. But having said that, as you said, you had the rapid growth, and then when COVID started last year, how did that feel? And obviously that should have changed also the outlook for you a little bit, and your industry was heavily affected by everything. So did it change your decision making at all? The uncertainty that arrived with COVID, and if so, how?
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, our industry, being business travel, first has suffered like many other industries, but I think one of the most hit industries, obviously, is business travel. We're talking about, back in April, the entire industry was at negative or reduction of 96, 98% of volumes, right? We're talking about basically going to zero. So yes, we were hit pretty heavily. We also had leading indicators that this is coming because of the fact that we're business travel. So we don't have a huge business in Asia, but we do have some customers there, and we saw the numbers already starting to decline. End of February. I was actually, embarrassingly enough, you can still find this interview on YouTube where I went to Sky. My first, I think, live interview ever. You go to the studio and you sit and they kind of make do makeup and all of this stuff. And then I want to talk about we had just released our sustainability product called GreenPerk, and it's it was great news, and I want to talk about that. And it's, by the way, a great product and will drive a lot of our business in the future. And I was there went to London to talk about GreenPerk, and the interviewer wanted to only talk about this virus. I think it was mid-February. So we had some leading indicators for this that this is coming. And when I remember I came back from the last holiday before COVID, I landed in the 1st of March back in Barcelona. And we had to meet with the team on a weekend. And we knew that this is going to basically change the year for us. We had very different idea for 2020 before COVID, obviously. And then we met the leadership team, on a Sunday in the office and just build a new plan. We just said, let's discard everything we had in mind for 2020. Let's build a new plan, given that this is coming, and we don't know. A lot of what we don't know is what is going to influence the future. So we need to build a plan with not much certainty to the future. So how do you build this resilience in the plan without really knowing where you're going towards? And this is kind of what we had to come up with.
Right. How many days were in between you first getting an inkling of that this might be a thing into then having to make that decision that, okay, now we have to do something?
Yeah. Talking probably about 2-3 weeks between the beginning of the data and then having to change the plans.
One thing I've been thinking about this past 12 months for many companies and entrepreneurs, which is probably challenging, is that you have to be very reactive during this year, and you don't know what's coming, and you need to adapt. As you said, your business goes almost to zero. You need to do something else. But how big a risk is there that you end up, making very reactive decisions, forget your long-term objectives and strategy, and then suddenly after the crisis, you don't have even your core business left?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's a big risk, right? And the way I would look at it is more than, if we have to use cliches, instead of the war cliche, we can use the storm cliche, of sailing, whereas you should still keep in mind, the ports to which you're sailing, but also take into account the weather that has changed and the winds and the waves. So you might have to take a detour. But if you end up landing in a different continent, then you kind of by definition failed in your mission to go to the port. So I think it's important to keep the end goal in mind or the next milestone in mind, but also to be pragmatic about the storm that is going around you, and realizing that if you force it, you'll just break your boat and break your sail and be stuck in the middle of the sea. So yeah, you have to be reactive to the environment. If you can, you need also to keep in mind the port. And I say if you can, because the reality is the main, and this is kind of what was the new strategy, if you will, that we had for 2020. The first priority was to survive. Right, so we have set 3 goals for the company for 2020. The first and the most important one being we need to survive. We need to weather the storm and have our boats kind of intact and at least have some sailing ability for after the wind. So we needed to cut obviously cost. We needed to make sure that we are responsible with how we spend our money, so we can extend this runway regardless of how long this crisis will last. And remember, back in April or March of last year, it wasn't obvious that how long it will or it wasn't clear how long it will take. Very few people, I think, thought it will take so long. And we are today in what? We are end of March, beginning of April 2021, and it's still not over, right? So this could be a very long journey, and we need to make sure you pace yourself. So make sure you have the right priorities for this uncertain future.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we continue with the storm analogy, let's say you're the captain of the ship and the executive decision is in your hands. You have to be the last guy telling the ship to turn either left or right. Does it change your mindset? We don't have to talk about the war analogy in the same way, but you're in a pressing situation where something external that you can't control is affecting your core business. How does this change your mindset as a leader of your group?
Yeah. You become much more focused, I would say, in immediate priorities. Right. So, and again, if survival is one, and obviously was number one for us, everything is focused around that and the other priorities. So kind of the resolution of what you can think about changes. I found that you also become much more. You increase your empathy and the sense of responsibility for the team and for the customers. So these are kind of the two main worries that you have is your team and your customers. The investors also matter. They're probably listening to this podcast, so you guys matter as well. But team and customers always come first in this moment. And I just found that you have an abundance of empathy, and it's almost unlimited, right? You don't find that you are finishing the day and it's like, okay, what about me? I spend the day thinking about others. It's the more you do it, the more you feel full of empathy and sounds a bit cheesy, but love. Like this is a moment of high emotion, and I found that as a team we connected on a very different level emotionally during this time. Not just me, like the whole team.
Yeah, this is kind of a quite a big contrast because I'm going to quote Ben Horowitz here. Peacetime CEO strives for broad-based buy-in in decisions, and wartime CEO neither indulges consensus building nor tolerates disagreement. So I wanted to get your take on, and I probably know what you're going to say, but based on this, and how did your decision-making function look? You already said that you gathered the leadership team on a Sunday and built a new plan together and tried to have empathy for the whole team. But were there some aspects where you needed to be quite firm also to make sure that everyone was, in fact, sticking to this new plan and not, having this higher resolution thinking? Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I don't know Ben Howarth's background well enough to know if he actually went to an actual war situation. But I have, right? I served 5 years in the military in Israel, and the reality of actual war or more stressful situations is you cannot actually get the team to do what they need to do without consensus. You just can't, especially because it's a risky situation, especially because there is so much at stake. And having this buy-in is crucial. Now, it doesn't mean that you keep doubting each other and changing your mind get yourself into kind of this analysis paralysis, during this risky time. No, it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you take a very short but very targeted, laser-focused time to debate and discuss. Then you make a decision. And sometimes the decision, if there is no consensus or you don't agree with the decision that the team consensus is driving towards, you have to top down say this is the decision. So I'm not saying everything is kind of kumbaya, let's hug a tree and dance until we have a decision. Sometimes you do have to make it, but you have this discussion so that people feel that and they are a part of it, and we're taking the risk together because this is all about risk, right? And we'll take the risk. We'll jump into the deep water. But we have this this discussion and this consensus. And then what's crucial is once you make the decision, you go to execution mode, and then there is no deviation from that. There is zero room for reopening a debate or reopening a point that we already agreed on. So the discipline is in execution, and there, my team, I'm sure will if you speak with them, they will tell you how I approach it. I have zero tolerance for let's go back and reopen it after we made a decision, even if it's not perfect. We have to go for it, and we have to commit to the jump. So there are just two steps, right? You meet on this weekend and have a discussion as a team. You make a decision. Sometimes I have to kind of top down force it. Sometimes it comes from team consensus. And regardless of who made the decision, then we stick to it and execute with this in mind and with no kind of deviation from that.
Yeah, this reminds me of a brilliant Bob Dylan quote that to live outside the law, you must be honest. So when you're not constrained by your sort of predetermined norms and you're living in a new situation with volatile sort of variables, then the team's trust in each other and the sort of team's integrity is what matters. And I think that fits perfectly here.
Eventually you fight in real war or our virtual wars, which are not as risky. I mean, eventually we just, worst case, you just find another job, right? So like, let's put things in perspective. This is not life or death, that, it's business.
Right.
But in both, I mean, you fight for your friends. You fight for the people next to you. You don't fight for an idea or flag or like some higher purpose. The reality is you take the risk because you trust the people next to you in your team. And I think in order to get there, you have to have this transparency and strong values. Otherwise, it's all fake.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Hey, let's jump into a bit more nitty-gritty questions, more technical stuff. So, one core idea or one core function we wanted to discuss is obviously funding and sufficient funding during a crisis. So, many startups obviously raise capital up front, maybe also have quite a lot of burn rate up front because there's a unit economic positivity and you're focusing on growth. But then in a situation like this where your revenue is going close to zero, what did you do in this situation? Did you have enough runway? Did you have to raise capital? And if you did, then what should you do? What did you do about it?
So the first point is we raised in the summer of 2019, and we had enough capital to go through even a year and a half with at least zero revenue. So I guess the first advice is make sure you have enough money all the time, because you don't know when the next pandemic or whatever crisis will impact your industry. You don't know when it's coming next. And it was actually interesting because we raised in the summer of 2019 when things were just perfect. Everything, we were growing like crazy. The world, the public market was great. Like everything was very positive in the summer of 2019 in our industry. And we had actually a big debate at the board of, should we raise and get a dilution? Should we wait a bit longer? And the valuation kept increasing every month, basically with revenue. So just wait a few more months and you're getting double valuation. Why raise now? And I personally don't like too much risk, which is maybe funny given the job I chose. So I don't like to take too much risk. So this was the risk that is not needed. And I prefer to take more dilution than to have to run with less runway. And I hadn't predicted COVID obviously in the summer of 2019, but what I did say to my board and to my investors is. Things are too good, like I don't know what will come, and I did say it, like things. I actually thought it was going to be a public market collapse, like another, stock market collapse, and I said something will happen. Like things cannot continue to be that good for so long, and eventually I was right, and I think this is kind of the first lesson is make sure you have enough money. If you can raise, even if it means a bit more dilution. I think it's always good to have 18 months plus of cash in the bank. And then, COVID hit and we, of course, had to cut costs. But I preferred to cut on. So the decision we took was to stick to our values. And especially in a moment of more difficulty, I think this is the moment where you really show your values. And if you only stick to your values in peacetime, then these are not values. It's a marketing, it's a PR tool. And sticking to our values meant, our first value is providing a 7-star experience to our customers and to our team. And 7-star, like the hotels, 5-star, 6-star. So we have the 7-star experience to our team. How can I say I'm providing 7-star experience to my team if in the moment where COVID hit, I fire all of them because in customer support and sales, for example, because we have no volume right now. And by the way, they all are travel agents. When I say customer support, I mean, we provide travel agency services to our customers. These are real people, not bots, sitting in the office right here behind me and 24/7 providing a 7-star experience to our customers. So they've been doing it for, since we started the company. And when COVID hits, I'm going just to throw them to the street, and obviously they cannot find another job. They are travel agents in the middle of the biggest crisis in travel industry. So we didn't fire them. We didn't do layoffs. We decided to cut costs in other places. We got rid of our fancy office, and I'm now in a kind of semi-crappy office, but that's okay. It's fine. We work from home anyway during this first few months. So we cut the cost in office. We don't have fruits anymore, or this all the startup-y M&Ms you find in the kitchen. All of this stuff, we just don't have it. And we cut costs by more than 40 OPEX, more than 40% like this, without doing layoffs.
That's a lot of M&Ms.
That's a lot of M&Ms. Yeah, people like the avocados, So no avocados. They came actually a joke in the company. I said, guys, no more avocados. Screw avocados. because the complaint of the typical kind of Silicon Valley complaint of, the avocados are not ripe enough. And like, okay, what? No freaking avocados. We are going to survive. I'm going to keep your jobs, but we're going to let go of the avocados. So that's the priorities that we took. And I think this is it feels like it was the right decision.
If you're a company that didn't plan ahead and didn't raise capital, or wasn't able to, or didn't think about it, or whatever, and you're facing bankruptcy in a situation like this, what other kinds of tips do you have for those kind of companies? If you're really in a tough situation, you need to start saving costs, but you don't necessarily want to start by firing people. What are some other tricks you can use to extend your runway?
So, I mean, in most tech companies, the biggest cost is payroll, right? So unfortunately, if you're looking at a few weeks of runway and no way of doing anything else, then you have to cut on your main cost. So I would say, first, don't get yourself into a situation if you can avoid it. Now, I actually worked with a few companies in the industry that were, as an advisor, that were basically a few weeks before going out of cash. And they had to go back and beg the investors. I mean, this is like it sounds maybe less sexy than what you find on TV, but this is the reality. You go back and you beg, and you try your best to get some cash in. You suffer from a lot of dilution in this event if you can get the money, and it was tough, right? Many companies had to basically close shop in our industry during COVID, because the reality also is the investors are not dumb, and it's not it's not a charity, right? Like they want to see how the returns are coming, and looking at the world back in last April, it didn't look like any returns are coming anytime soon. So don't get yourself into a situation is probably the best advice. And if you're already there, then you have unfortunately to cut the main cost, which I suspect is payroll. And then go and beg to raise. By the way, you could also try to get some funding from your customers. If you have a good product that they appreciate, sometimes they would, especially if the customers are not suffering. If the customers are in an industry that hasn't suffered, and we went through 2020 where we had an uneven world where, for example, the Zooms of the world, of course, had a great year. So maybe if your customers are the Zooms of the world, maybe you can negotiate, upfront, the payment for a year in exchange for a discount. So there are ways of generating a bit more cash flow. That of course you'll have to pay back in the future, but if it's a cash flow situation, then maybe from the customers you can get some oxygen like this.
Mm. Now you said you didn't fire anyone during the sort of peak of the crisis for you. But if you would have been faced with the same situation that you just explained, how would you have done it? Or have you thought about this at all? How would you have done it and then still ensured morale within the team?
I would have done it exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Exactly the same way. I'm so proud of the team and of our decisions. This is, I mean, it's rare to have been tested like this and to, it's a bit like, I don't know if it happened to you, like you go in the street and you see something wrong happening, like somebody's wallet being stolen or violently, or, somebody mistreating a child, or whatever, like just making up some bad things you can see in the street. And then you don't do anything because you're afraid, because you think maybe somebody else will do something, and then nobody does anything, and you just freeze, which is a very natural human reaction. And then you always kind of go back and like, like you feel like you should have done something differently. And if it's the opposite, if you did something that you're so proud, even if you put yourself at some kind of risk there in sticking up, you feel so proud that you were tested. And in a moment where it was very difficult to react like this with courage and with sticking to your values as a person, you did it, then you feel very proud of that. So I think this is very important. This is not about me, it's about the company and about the team, and we all feel very proud of how we handled the year. So no, I wouldn't change anything.
Going into culture, then, which we touched upon already with the funding question, and we understand your view on that. But maybe if we could have like a checklist or something, like the most important things to manage during these kinds of crises, where you need to, ensure morale and get rid of the avocados and stuff. So what should you manage, and how should you go about keeping the morale high?
Yeah. So first, I'm not sure it's possible to keep the morale high all the time in a time like this. So you have to just acknowledge also that people are going through some really tough crap, and everybody. And the thing with COVID is, imagine like a normal time where you go through normal times, and somebody in the team always has it's a big team, so one person unfortunately has some personal issue or maybe a health concern in the family, but it's a normal time, so they are the one-off, and you have a strong network of support around them, that people who are not going through the same crisis who can help them and kind of give them some perspective. But one of the issues of 2020 is everybody went through the same hard time, so it wasn't special. Right, like you suffering is not special. It's like everybody is suffering as well, and we had people who lost, family members to COVID. We had people who went through, a very tough time personally. Who had COVID. Thank God we didn't lose anybody, in the team, but people suffered, tremendously from COVID in the team. And so the challenge is that everybody is going through it, but also the opportunity is that everybody is going through it. So I think you just have to acknowledge it and be very transparent and open and create this environment where people feel okay to share what's going on, and either one-on-one or in a team. And we had session where we just, during the lockdown, for example, we had pretty strict lockdown here in Spain. For 7 weeks, we couldn't leave home for any reason, zero. Like we just we're stuck at home for 7 weeks. And imagine people, in small apartments in the city with kids. Sometimes it was very tough, and we would just jump on a Zoom call and somebody in the team is a DJ, so she would play some music for us, and people would dance, and we just it didn't have any agenda of like let's talk about our emotion, but just connecting, because we need the human connection, right? And the human connection that is missing is physical human connection. So creating this space of connecting. But just being there with people, it's not the same as being there in person, obviously, but creating this community or having this community and using the community to just have this human presence helped a lot at the beginning. And then the second point was communication and giving the most clarity that I could to the team. So I would speak with the team, give them as much clarity as I could. Now, I also didn't know what was going to happen. But for example, I knew that I wasn't going to give up so easily and have them lose their job. So give them this clarity about, hey, you'll keep your job as long as we have cash. The last thing I'm going to do is do layoffs. So it just gives them a bit more confidence around the immediate needs, because again, you're worried about so many things, and your job, your health, your family, the world. So communicating with transparency and giving them as much clarity as I could, I think was also crucial.
Yeah. Do you think this, now in hindsight, has it made you closer in a way? I don't know if I'm making a wrong assumption about your military days, but I'd assume that you got pretty close with those guys as well. And would you say that it's also because of the things that it's not in spite of the things that you experienced, it's because of the things that you experienced, right?
For sure, yeah. I mean, in general, like crisis tends to crystallize, and to make groups and people stronger, or to break them, right? Which is unfortunately, right? I mean, it's not all positive, obviously, and sometimes it does break you. If it doesn't break you, that's kind of the obvious cliche, is like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And it's actually true, I think. So it bear risk, of course, and I wouldn't choose to go through crisis, as a team formation exercise. And you try to imitate it with team building stuff, but it's always kind of fenced with safety and regulation, and you jump from the treetop with a zip line, but you attach in 3 different safety cords. Real crisis is doing this without the safety cords. You might fall down and die, and if you don't, then maybe you become stronger. So again, I don't recommend it as a something you choose to do, but if you are forced to go through it, of course, on the other side of it, you become much stronger as a team, and also individually, you build resilience, right? You build your own resilience, and I think in a way, we have a crisis in the West, and in some way, the bigger kind of societal crisis is driven also by the fact that our generation. I'm 38. Looking at you guys' faces, you're younger than me, but not by much.
No, not that much.
Yeah. So we have lived in the most peaceful time in Europe and in the US, and in a way, when you go through such a peaceful and time of abundance and very low risk, you become weaker, right, as a society and as people. So maybe COVID also will be if you're looking for the silver lining, maybe COVID would have given us, as in the West, is a bit of resilience that we have lost since the war.
Yeah. I'm sure it will once we get through it.
It's a great take.
Yeah, exactly. About communication still, was there any, internally you had to be very transparent. You told people everything you knew. Did that vary in terms of how you communicated with maybe, towards your customers or investors, or was it full transparency in that direction as well?
Yeah. It's too, you don't have enough mind space to pretend to be doing okay in a moment like this, right? So, if you want to go back to the war cliche that I don't like, but if we have to go back to it, then you see people cry, like grown-ups crying, and it's fine, like it's a part of how it is, and you break down, and then your friends pick you up, and then you continue, right? So. You don't have the space, the mind in a real crisis. Like you have to be so focused on solving it and on being there for your team and for yourself, for your family. Pretending is not of a priority, right? So I encourage everybody else around me to be authentic and honest. And we went through tough times and better times, and just accept that people are not doing okay today, and give them the space, and maybe tomorrow they'll do better. And I didn't waste time pretending that things are okay, and we're killing it, we're crushing it. No.
Yeah. It seems like whatever wartime, peacetime, the wartime kind of reveals that jargon. It reveals it as being. It's easy to pump words up with hype when you're not faced with the reality of actually have to live up to those words in a real way.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned buying up a competitor. Was that during the crisis or already before that?
Yeah, so we had this company is called Next Travel. It's a US-based business travel platform that we actually had met years ago. The founder, this brilliant woman called Wen Lam, and I have met probably 4 years ago for the first time, something like this. And I always appreciated her intelligence and her team's approach and what the product they built. So sometimes you have competitors that you really appreciate and you're happy to play nicely with them, and of course you want to win. It's not like you will not give them a victory, but it's a friendly competition. It's like a rugby type of competition where you will go and be very aggressive in the play field, but then you go shake hands and have beer afterwards, and you can still be friends. So we always had them in mind. They were just kind of, the moment wasn't right until COVID hit, and it was just the right moment, the right timing for them and also for us. So we did it during COVID. We actually announced it beginning of this year. We closed it at Q4, but we had discussions. Probably we started serious discussions after the summer.
Yeah, it's obviously great to hear that you're able to do these kind of forward-thinking moves in the middle of the pandemic, and it's something I've been thinking about as well quite a lot. Is that the companies that are able to maybe see past this pandemic and take some more risk will be the ones that will be very strongly positioned after this all ends.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is, if you look at the greatest companies of our time, online, they had either they were created during a crisis, or they had a crisis really early on. From Amazon to Facebook, even Google, right? So I think it's again going back to the resilience point. It builds this kind of resilience. Amazon, of course, to this day, famously uses doors instead of desks. I don't know if it's still true, but for a while it was true, and it all comes from the moment, from the fact that they kind of scaled during the .com bubble and what came after. So in a way, I think crisis actually helps forming a strong company. And again, it's not something you choose, and statistically, because it's a crisis, then the likelihood of surviving it is lower. But I think if you do survive it, then again, going back to the stats and the data, it looks like it's more likely that you emerge stronger and have a better chances of kind of scaling into your whatever your goal is. In a way, also thanks to the crisis.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If there's something you could have done differently for the past 12 months, some learnings to take away, something you would have told yourself at the beginning of COVID, is there something?
Yeah. So I think you have to be an optimist in order to do my job, right? And because optimist and arrogant, because you're looking at the stats when you start a company, and the likelihood of actually getting into $100 billion market cap, basically it's the chances are very, very low.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur is ridiculous. It's just a ridiculous idea.
Yeah. So everybody who comes to me is like, hey, should I be a founder? Like, no, join me in my company because statistically speaking, you're going to fail, and you're a very smart person, so I want you to join us. It's a pretty silly decision, and you take it because you're an optimist and arrogant. So so I try to control both. I try to control for both aspects. I don't typically keep a journal, but I started. It felt like I should, keep a journal for the COVID year. So I started writing it around the time we had a new plan, so beginning of March. And if I go back to what I wrote to myself, I never shared it with anybody. But when I go back to what I wrote for myself back in March, I said, I told myself that this would be over by June of 2020. So I said, this is, it's going to be over by June. So I think I would have changed a bit my optimism. And I'm not saying I would be a pessimist, but I would adjust a bit how optimistic I am. The good news were that I have different level of optimism in my team. And we had, for example, one of my leadership team members was very pessimistic about, or in my view, was pessimistic. It was actually realistic. He was right, and I was wrong. And because of how we make decisions, his what I perceived as pessimism, what actually realism influenced our decision making, and we actually took decisions with this in mind. So, but had I had my optimism won, we probably would have died running out of cash. So I probably would have adjusted a bit my optimism, I probably would have chosen to be more, let's go with the data instead of trying to find the data that fits my optimism, which was how I handled it at the beginning. I was like, oh, look at this, because the cases are like this, are flatter, so it's over. Like I was really trying to find whatever data point that proves that I was right, and until I realized that no, this is going to be with us for a bit longer than what you thought originally.
Yeah, no, I think that's what makes you a great entrepreneur, and that would be a questionable mode of doing science. But luckily, you're an entrepreneur, and I think we're looking forward to you writing a real wartime Peacetime CEO article and sending that over to Ben at some point. So it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you so
very
much.
much. Thank you.
And thanks to everyone who tuned in. Leave a comment and tell us where your favorite destination to travel is once this all opens up. See you in the next episode. Bye.